So we have Michael Stahl here from, he's a freelance writer. You've seen his stories in Rolling Stone, Huffington Post, and other publications. He had I guess, the great joy of co-writing with Bartolo Colon on Big Sexy in his own words. Welcome, Michael.
Thanks for having me. And yeah, it was a real joy. Um, just a tremendous experience. It's my first book, and just super excited about it. Got to go down to the Dominican Republic to hang out with him a little bit, see where he grew up. That was just a mind blowing experience, and met with him a couple times too in his house in New Jersey. Got to hold the home run bat, which was just a great thrill. And yeah, and also, for the book too, I got to speak on the phone to Terry Collins. I got to speak to Manny Ramirez. I got to speak to Ray Ramirez, actually, Dan Worthen, Omar Vizquel. So that was, just the whole top to bottom, the whole experience has just been a thrill, and I'm so excited about the book coming out.
That's awesome that you got to hold the home run bat. Where were you that day? When he actually hit the home run.
Well, the day he hit the home run, I don't remember exactly where I was at. Unfortunately, I was not watching the game. I know that, and I know that because I remember seeing the highlight. I must have been out or something. Then later that day, when I saw the highlights, when I got home and I was on my laptop, I was freaking out. I was
Well,
totally freaking out. Crazy.
I happened to be out with the 7 line to go see that
Yeah,
game.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And the funny thing was, we were walking around the stadium in a stadium tour earlier, and one
Mhm.
of my friends turned around and said Bartolo was going to hit a home run that day.
Right.
And when
Oh,
he hit
really?
it, yeah, because we were in the like one of the back areas where it's like the old metal factory,
Yeah, yeah.
and they were talking about how Mike Piazza hit a home run off of the E up there. And my friend Kylie turned around and she was like, "Yeah, Bartolo's going to hit one today," and that's
That's
why everybody went super
crazy.
nuts. Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. And I'm sure you saw in the book, Darren from the Seven Line, buddy of yours, I guess, right?
It
You
was
know,
in
he.
my wedding party.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, so a close buddy of yours. He
Yeah.
tells that great story about that guy too. That said, if he promised that if Bartolo ever hits a home run, he's gonna get a tattoo. And Darren was talking to him at the bar before the game.
Hmm.
They were like cracking up, like, "Yeah, right." And then it happens in front of the guy's eyes. Unbelievable.
Yeah, it was crazy. Did Bartolo hear that story, or did you get that afterwards?
Uh, I got I got that story about the tattoo afterwards. Yeah, and Bartolo. I mean, Bartolo's a really nice guy. I'm not going to say otherwise, but it's not like we developed that kind of. Not that there's anything wrong with this. That we didn't develop that kind of friendship where I just call him up and just be like, "Hey, dude, like,
Yeah,
I heard this." It was a professional
no,
arrangement. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I totally get that. I'm going to ask a few questions you before I get into what Bartolo was saying in the book.
Sure. Please ask anything. I
What
can't promise I'll answer, but you can ask me anything.
So when you heard about the Bartolo book, what drew you to want to write it? I'm sure it got offered or you tried to get the book, but what made you want to do it?
Yeah, well, so the way that the book came together for me was Garrett McGrath, who is the editor. He works at Abrams Books. He actually just called me out of the blue. It was the day after Labor Day, 2018, and we've been friends for about 6 or 7 years. And and he just my writing has just progressed to the point where he felt that I'd be capable of something like this, and just he knew I was a huge Mets fan and a fan of Bartolo's. In fact, and I did not tell Bartolo this because I wasn't sure how it would translate. But for years before, my fantasy baseball team name was Bartolo's colon, which is executed with just an apostrophe S, and nothing else needs to be changed. So, of all the people for me to to write my first book, it's got to be this guy who I've honored in my fantasy baseball team name. Anyway, so he just calls me, Garrett. That is, he just calls me and he says, Mike, we've got a book that we're working on, and I think you'll be a good fit as writer. That's all he told me, and I said I'll do it,
Oh,
just because I'm a freelance writer, and it's like Garrett. If Garrett is coming to me, a friend of mine, and he says that he thinks I'm right for something, I've learned, over the years that things kind of tend to fall into place just correctly, as much as you might want them to, maybe ahead of time. Things always tend to sort of work out just the way that they're supposed to. So if he was saying that I'd be right for it, I knew I'd be right for it no matter what. So I already signed on verbally, and then he says, "Well, so it's Bartolo Colon's autobiography." I said, "Yeah, I'm your guy." And and he said, "We'll pay you this much. We'll send you to the DR." I go, "Yeah, dude, I'm doing it. I'm doing it." And it took a few months to get the contract stuff in order, and then that was, like I said, September 2018. May 2019, I meet him, and I go down to the Dominican Republic, and then in June I wrote the book. Um, so yeah, so that first day that I got to go to Bartolo's house after like 8 months of anticipation, actually, it was from September to May. Um, getting to his house in New Jersey and just seeing him in the flesh, it was kind of a trip, man. He's very quiet, especially at first. He's really quiet. That is true about him, that he's shy. And I just remember talking to him through an interpreter. I don't speak Spanish. Um, Talking to him through an interpreter, and he just was very sort of like, okay, smiling, but saying like, okay, great, one word answers. And at one point, I said to him, I said, "Do you want to know anything about me?" I mean, I'm thinking like I'm going to write this guy's life story. Maybe he'd like to know a little something. Like, am I a fan or whatever? I go, "Do you want to know anything about me?" He goes, "No." Just like, all right, all business, Bartolo.
yeah, from like I never actually met him, but from like going to the games and going to the games beforehand, he seems very aloof, even in the field with
Yeah,
like his teammates. He just seems like, yeah, whatever. It's I'm just here to have a good time and do my thing.
very very easygoing guy, and aloof almost to a fault, just because I only say that because it's like trying to like organize things with him and get a meeting time set up and stuff sometimes is a little problematic, because he seems to live life 45 minutes at a time or something like that, which is funny. But hey, shouldn't we all maybe live a little more like that?
Yeah, that
So yeah, so then with the bat, we went downstairs into, he has this sort of like playroom, but like for adults. There's a bar, and it's downstairs in his basement. It's kind of like a man cave, entertaining space. And we do the interview. I talked to him for about that first day, I think about an hour and a half. And we just, I think someone just remarked at the bar or whatever, like, "Oh, this space is great." He goes, "Here, come over." And we went over to the bar, and behind the bar he had the bat, and he just busted it out. And he just is like, "You know what this is?" I'm like, "I think I know what that is." And I said, "Can we hold it and take pictures?" And he was like, "Sure." So me and Garrett, we took pictures with him in the bat. It was great. It was, again, unbelievable.
that's pretty awesome. I actually have a connection with a piece of memorabilia I used to own. You
Mhm.
remember when he tied for second place with the for the most wins by a Latin American born pitcher in
Yeah,
Cleveland?
yeah, yeah.
I had the jersey from that game.
Get out of here. That's incredible.
Yeah, I bought it. I held on to it, and I'm like, you know what? There's other big Bartolo fans out there. I'd rather have them have it. So I ended up selling it, but I was able to get that
Oh,
piece of history too. I
yeah,
still have a
and
rosin bag from that game.
that was a huge deal down in the Dominican Republic. That's in the book. The town where he lives. I mean, he is a god. It's just a small sort of, suburban, kind of little area, um, rural in some parts, very rural in some parts. I mean, he is just an absolute guy. I mean, he's easily the most famous person to come from the town where he's from.
Yeah,
And
that
even when he was building up to having the most wins ever, every time he would win a game, like they would throw this like massive celebration like throughout the whole city.
Well,
talent.
that's really one of the things I noticed in the book that I got to pre-read a little bit was the celebration for the Cy Young. With
Yeah.
that party. That sounded like you know it was like a ticker tape parade for one, and just
Oh,
like he was given to his community that he grew up in, and they were also reciprocating the fact that that they loved him for being able to go to the MLB and actually put their town on the map.
he's incredibly generous, and that I think you see that come across in that section about his parade and how beloved he is. But also, I visited. He took me to see the ball field where he first pitched uh, ever in life. He was about 14 years old the first time he pitched a game, and he took me to this ball field. And just while we were hanging out there, and I was interviewing him, uh, this woman, she looked like she's probably about 60, 65 years old. She just like walks down to the ball field. Hey, Bartolo, kisses him on the cheek. They're just talking like they've known each other forever. And guess what? They have, right? And it's just old friends, no fame barricade or anything like that. And his interpreter that day, he says to me, this woman, she needed a house, and Bartolo built one for her.
That's awesome, and
Like
I'm
this,
glad.
you
I'm
know,
glad. Yeah, I'm
uh,
just glad like this book is
you
coming
never
out.
hear about that.
Yeah,
You
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 want to hear about it. I
yeah,
never heard that story, and I'm pretty locked into trying to find stuff about baseball players and
yeah.
just wanting to hear the good things that they do because a lot of times on media you'll
And
hear
there's
the
more
bad
of that
things.
there's more of that stuff in the book, by the way.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I was catching some of it. I skimmed over what you sent me just
Sure.
to see, and like you know, you hear some of the not so pretty things that ball players do, and but you never hear stuff like this.
Yeah,
You know, um,
absolutely. And what kind of a guy would he look like if he just sent out a press release one day and it's like, hey, this woman up the block from me, her house was getting old and she needed a new one, so I just paid to have one built. I mean, he
yeah,
wouldn't do that either. You
no,
know what I mean? So
yeah, totally. And speaking about him growing up and his town, the other thing that was very interesting was about his donkey Pancho,
mhm.
and it was a pet, but it was also it meant a lot to him because it came from his dad, and they were able to use it to help work. So it was a
Yeah.
pet, and it was able to still help out with the family chores with the coffee farm.
Yeah, he loved Pancho. And there's a museum dedicated to him in his stadium that he built. Down in Altamira, close to where he grew up. He built a stadium which is now this academy where young baseball players, in the Dominican Republic can learn the ropes, and they get rights to the players that and then if the players sign with the major league club, they get like a portion of their salary as payment for the training. But in that stadium, there's a museum dedicated to him as well. And there's like a whole section on Pancho, his his donkey, with sort of this like cardboard life-size cardboard cutout of a donkey. I don't even know if it's the Pancho. I doubt it, but there's just this life-size cardboard cutout of a donkey there, and a whole exhibition in Spanish on what Pancho did for him and meant for him. So yeah, so he would load up avocados, he would load up cacao and coffee beans on Pancho's back, like 10, 20, 40 pounds of each or something like that, and carry the goods from the fields to his father's store, and his father bought it for him. So it was like your dad buying you like a screwdriver set or something, as a kid, something like that.
Yeah, just from the writing of it, it just you could feel like the emotion of what that Pancho meant to him. So you know,
And then his tragic demise.
yeah, and you could tell what that did to him too. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, and then I just between the way you write and the way the stories that he was telling, like
Yeah,
this book seems like it's going to be a very fast read. It's a very enjoyable read from what I was reading.
yeah.
Um,
Thank you. Appreciate that.
oh, no problem. I've read your stuff in the past, different
Thank
things. I first met you at the QBC, I think. You
Yeah,
came in, and
yeah. I wrote a story about it. Yeah.
yeah. Um, was there anything that you wanted to get into the book that would have made it too long and you didn't put it in?
No, actually, really everything. I think like pretty much everything we talked about is in the book. Anything that he was comfortable going into that we spoke of, and I find the book to be very revealing. We got into, and I asked him a few times, is there anything else that you could think of that you want in here, and he said no. He gave me fantastic access, and I've been telling a lot of people, the book just came out great. It came out exactly the way that I wanted it to. And the only reason why I say that I think it came out great is not so much that I think I'm some hotshot writer. I think that his access to me and his story is so good. I just happened to be the funnel that it ran through.
Awesome. I don't want to hold you too long. I could talk to you for hours because
No, but I'm here for as long as you need.
um, is there anything that you want to tease folks with about really buying the book? I'm like, I already bought the pre-order,
Sure.
even though you sent me, the uh, the stuff to skim through. But I wanted to read the whole book, so
I appreciate
um,
that.
no problem.
Yeah,
So just tease away. I want to sell as many copies as possible for you. I want
thanks, man.
people to get to know Bartolo.
Yeah, well, so first of all, to answer that part of the question, to get to know him, he is shy, he is reserved, he is funny, um, but he's also, I think, a lot smarter than people might realize, but like also kind of in his own way. He has this sort of very like observant intelligence. He's just a very good observer, and he's sensitive. He on many occasions he would say something to me a certain way, and then it would go through the interpreter, and then he'd kind of like stress like certain points, and it was so that he could just very accurately not just get his point across, but also like didn't want to risk like hurting other people's feelings, at times as well. So I noticed that about him, that again he's very sensitive and smart and conscientious, and I really like that about him. So there's that, and then yeah, there are some stories in the book. Again, yeah, don't want to give too many details away, but there's a tremendous Mariano Rivera story in the book that I think people are going to really love. Obviously, Mariano, a beloved player, and Bartolo spent very little time with the Yankees, just one season, but he pitched well, and that was at the tail end of a period in his life where there was a lot of upheaval in his personal life, and Mariano really helps him through that period, and Bartolo goes into some detail about that. And then yeah, just even leading up to that, there's tremendous personal tragedy in his life that I don't think people realized. Um, the people don't understand that that year that he was out of baseball, they think it was like totally due to injury, and that's not exactly the whole story. Here you get the whole story. And then he does discuss his steroid use, his PED suspension. In fact, when I was interviewing him, he brought that up to me. I didn't even need to broach that subject to him. So, um, I think again, people will really get to know him a lot better. He always seemed like that one of those guys that you seemed like you can kind of just relate to, and you knew just based on his interviews and watching him in games and stuff. And that was true, but only to a certain extent. I think with this book, you really do get to know him very intimately and very well.
And I also think Mets fans will be very surprised about what he thinks about them and where his favorite place to play is.
Yeah. Yeah, so we have these, thanks for bringing that up. We have these like little asides in the book where I basically asked um Bartolo, just some sort of like one, you know, first thought, like word, sort of like here's a question, what's like your sort of your first thought. So I asked him, like, who's your favorite all-time player? What's your favorite jersey to wear? Who, was your favorite place to play? And he said, for that question, he said Citi Field. Um, but yeah, he really, and there's a lot, honestly, like, not to take away from the other parts of the book, there's a lot on the Mets in this book. Um, Maybe some of that has to do with the fact that I'm a Mets fan. And like I said, I was the channel through the story that the story ran through. But still, at the same time, I think that, you know, his time with the Mets was really when I mean, it literally is when he became big sexy.
Yep.
He was in the World Series. He was in the All-Star game. He hit the home run. So I think it just also sort of naturally, his story lent itself to a lot of stuff happening for him in New York. And that may seem like that was an advantageous thing, but actually it was really sort of organic the way that it worked out that way. But he loved the Mets. He loved being with the Mets. He loved the Mets fans big time, for real.
You could definitely see that when he was coming onto the field and he was getting cheered. You could tell like when he tipped his cap to the fans, he really meant it too. So
And he actually said, I thought this was interesting. I brought up, so for me, I remembered his, I don't think it was his first at bat in Citi Field, but it was something like his second or third game that he pitched at Citi Field, and he pitched against Irvin Santana. And that was the first time that the helmet like went flying off his head and everything like that against the Braves. And so I asked him about that, and he said that when he was walking back to the dugout, he said he heard the crowd laughing at him, and he actually got upset. Like for a second, it didn't last long, but for a second, he was kind of like, "What the hell? Like, why are people laughing at me? I'm trying to get a hit here." And then he just realized, he kind of got a better hold of his emotions, and he had a laugh about it. And then he told the equipment manager, he said, "Hey, next time I want an even bigger helmet." So he was he was wearing a big helmet on purpose after that, so that it would go flying off, and it did many times after that. What a
you know,
showman!
yeah, that's awesome. Then people are going to talk about him, and people get the experience. All right, so I want you to plug away. I want you to plug your Twitter, where to get the book, everything.
Yeah, so I mean, you can get the book just about anywhere: Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Abrams Books. Just Google it; you'll find it. That's all we need to do these days, right?
Yeah, I'll post a link later too when I put up
Great.
the video.
But anyway, yeah, you could find me on Twitter at Michael R. Stahl. That's Stahl. Michael R. Stahl on Twitter. My website is michaelstahlwrites.com. And yeah, just freelancing. You'll find me all over the place. Narratively, City Lab, Vulture, Rolling Stone, which you mentioned, a bunch of places. So keep an eye on my byline, and just really appreciate the support, and buy the book. Mets fans are going to love it. Even if you're not a big baseball fan, honestly, there's a lot of stuff for you to enjoy in the book.
Yeah, it's a great read. Like I said, I skimmed it. It's a great read. I can't wait to really get into it. I didn't want to ruin too much of it for myself, so I could tell it's going to be a fast read. You guys are going to want more, so just buy the book, and I'll make sure I put up the places where you can get it.